So how can pastors help someone dechurched from displacement? How can we help with that? And as an extension, how can you help with that? Let's talk about this. There's a lot of reasons people are displaced. The primary ones are either relocation or the church closed its doors for some reason. An unfortunate reality that sometimes churches become unhealthy and the organization falls apart and they have to close their doors. And then what do the people left in that church do? When the church that they've been in for often decades has closed its doors, now what do? And maybe they had to move to another city because of their work, another state, another country because of their job. And they had to leave a church that they loved dearly. Now what do? Sometimes people leave churches over doctrinal issues. In other words, what we believe. I would warn you that the only reason to leave over doctrinal issues is over major doctrinal issues. So if you're concerned about doctrine, you have questions about doctrine, come and talk to me or one of our other pastors. We'd love to have those conversations with you. But there is a difference between major and minor doctrines. Some things are clear in Scripture that affect your salvation, and some things aren't as clear in Scripture or don't affect eternity for you. And so some of those you can divide over, some of them you don't. Some of them you should, and most of them you shouldn't. And so I do say sometimes people have to leave a church because they've made a shift on a major doctrinal issue. Okay, what do we do with this? Look at Acts 18. We actually get a little bit of a case study of how this could happen. Verses 24 through 27. Now a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was an eloquent man, competent in the Scriptures. That means he knew the Old Testament when it says the Scriptures. And he was able to speak clearly about it. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord. In other words, somebody told him about Jesus, and he believed. And being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately things concerning Jesus, though he knew only the baptism of John. This means that he wasn't intricately involved with members of Christ's church. But he heard about Jesus, and he was saying true things about him. Look how it goes on. It says, he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, but when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him aside and explained the way of God more accurately. You can see like a little bit of a, hey, brother, let's come over here. Let's have a conversation. Let's get into the New Testament. Let's figure some things out. Let's sort of fix the way that you're thinking about Jesus, right? That's what they did. And then when he wished to cross to Achaia, the brothers encouraged him and wrote to the disciples there to welcome him. When he arrived, he greatly helped those who through grace had believed. Okay, so check it out. Who's this Apollos guy? So he's an Alexandrian Jew, which means that he's was raised sort of in the synagogue system, a faithful Jewish man who then believed in Jesus, probably because the disciples of John the Baptist had told him that the Messiah was coming and that his name was Jesus. And so he believed through them, and he was baptized by John. And so now he's sort of an evangelist. He's going around, notice, on his own. He's going around on his own, preaching to the Jews about Jesus. Okay, that's who he is. But notice that he was a lone Christian. He was by himself. He wasn't traveling with other Christians. When he came into Ephesus, he didn't seek out the church. He went straight to the synagogue to try to convert Jews to Christ. What did Priscilla and Aquila do when they met this dude? They brought him together and they corrected his doctrine. I imagine they probably baptized him. But I think they probably taught him about the church, about the importance of assembling with other Christians. And here's why I think that. Because when he came to Ephesus and he met them, she then connected them to the brothers. And then when he wanted to go over to the region of Achaia to preach to Jews there, the church in Ephesus sent word to the church in Achaia about his coming so that when he transferred there, he transferred to the church in Achaia. I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. that if you're here and you're a member of Palmdale Church and for some reason you have to move somewhere else, I want to know where you're going, and I'm going to call the pastor of the church you're going to join. Why? Because I'm holding a heavy hand over you? No. Because I care that you don't lose the stability of your faith that you have here when you move somewhere else. If your job takes you somewhere else, I don't want you to just disappear into the night. I want you to be received by the brothers in the place that you go to. And this is something we've done with nearly every one of the members who have left this church. Not every single person who comes in and out, but those who have actually placed membership in our church, if they have to give up their membership for some reason, I want to know where they're going. And I do this. I will call the pastor of the church they say they're going to. And I'll say, hey, this is Trey and Talina Booker. You're not going anywhere. But this is Trey and Talina Booker, and they're going to be coming to your church. And I want to follow up and let you know and make sure that they made it, that they were received well, that they were welcomed. Right? I might ask some doctrinal questions on your behalf. Because I care about this. Because if you're not connected to the body, then you're not connected to Christ. There's no such thing as a lone Christian that does it on their own. There is no communion with God if there's no communion with God's people. And so he goes to Ephesus. Then he wants to go on. And I think, what should we do with Christians who move into our area and they don't have a church because they were displaced? Well, I think just like Priscilla and Aquila went and they found Apollos, and they were like, hey, man, you got to come meet before you're going to hang out in the synagogue, come meet the brothers and sisters at the church. Come meet them. Come plug in with them. Let's baptize you. Let's fix your doctrine. Let's clarify some things here. Let's get your thinking right so that you're prepared to go and boldly proclaim to the Jews. Let's connect you. And that's what I think we need to do. And our elders, our pastors, we do this when people come into our church. We want to talk about membership. I want to know when you were baptized. I want to know if you received Trinitarian baptism. I want to know some things you believe. I want to have some conversations. If there's some doctrine that needs to be corrected, we're going to do that. But we want to take people who are in this community that have been dechurched because they moved here. And even though I know, again, I said this is a transient community. People are constantly in and out. And I know that when somebody comes to the church, they might only be here a year or two. So I want to make sure as the primary teacher in this church that I equip you, that I'm answering your questions, that I'm filling in the holes in your thinking so that you're ready. If your job's going to move you again, or your family's going to move you again, or life circumstances are going to move you again, I want to make sure that you're equipped when you go out. And that you go out and you join another church. See, this is a local church, and well, we don't have other local churches right here in 93552 for you to go to. But I'm not looking for you to leave and go to another church locally. But in the event that you have to go somewhere else, I want to make sure that you're connected to a Bible-believing church. That's what we want to do. It's like, I fear that too many Christians think about their membership in a church like they do a gym membership. You see, when I had a gym membership, and this ironically backfired on me, but when I had a gym membership, I went online and canceled it. And then I just quit going. And that's usually how a gym membership works, right? The other day I decided I had too many credits on Audible that I was paying for, and I wasn't listening to enough audiobooks. So I went online and I canceled it, and I saved $15 a month, right? I didn't call Amazon and say, hey, I need to cancel this thing. They didn't call me after, right? They weren't like, hey, no, they sent me some emails begging for me to come back because they want my money, but they didn't hunt me down. They didn't want to know where else I'm going for my audiobook needs. They didn't ask me that. They don't want to know. And too many Christians, you're treating your church membership that way. Like if you leave this church, you can just block the text message numbers and stop answering calls and go somewhere else. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if that's the way you're thinking about this, I want you to be challenged about your connectivity to this church. If you think that you can just fade into the night, and we're going to forget about you, I want you to know that you're wrong. That even if you don't love this church enough to remain connected and to dig in and to make relationships with people in your small group and to bond together, that to express your bond that you have with Christ to the bond that you have with the body, even if you don't love this church that way, we love you that way. And I, as your lead pastor, I'm not going to let that happen. We're going to make some phone calls. I've knocked on people's doors when they won't answer my phone calls. And I don't think that's inappropriate. Not at all. Because I would do that for my brother or my sister if they ghosted me, my blood. I would do that with them, wouldn't you? And so we will do that with you because you are one with us in spirit and we love you. And so be bonded to each other and then express that bond to those who are in our community that apparently moved here without that bond. Their pastors from their churches didn't send them out and connect them to a local church. And so we need to go find them and bring them into that bond. And I like how Priscilla and Aquila, they took it upon themselves. They're not the pastors of that church. It doesn't appear that way in the text to me. They're the congregation. They are faithful followers of Jesus Christ, and they took it upon themselves to connect Apollos to the church, and you can do that too. And you ought to. They didn't wait for the pastors to do it. They taught him. They brought him to the church. They introduced him to the disciples, to the brothers and sisters, and you can do that too. You all know multiple people who used to be a part of the church and no longer are. You all know them. Go and get them. Bring them back. Save them from a multitude of sins.